I'm sitting on what we sometimes call the top of Thessaloniki, on the high hill which the old city was built on with the walls, together with my friend Dimitri Sideropoulos, who's the son-in-law of late Dr. Alexander Kalomoros. And the interesting thing here, wherever we are, we're sitting beside the Byzantine walls of the city, which ran really all the way down to the port. But one of the fascinating things about being in Thessaloniki is having coffee. Sometimes even you lean against a wall that was built 1,000 years ago. And these walls, well, built in the 400s, some in the 500s, and stood built on the side of a Roman fort for previous times. Of course, the Byzantine Empire is the Roman Empire, but the walls were maintained by the Turks when they conquered this area, but the walls themselves are really from the 400s. And you can see down over the entire city of Thessaloniki. Out to the Kolpos, and probably it's too hazy or fog, a little bit too much, maybe air pollution or mist. You can't see, otherwise sometimes you can see Mount Olympus from here, and a few even some wild fig trees growing around, and others. Thessaloniki is a city which has a good culture to it. There are many cultural aspects to the city.
2,300 history. 2,300 history.
200,000.
2,300 years history.
Yeah, this city was built even, I think, even Alexander the Great's father Philip built something here for, it was a thermi. There was a hot spring here before, and his wife name was Cassandra, and he built something here for her. The Cassandra Gate of the city is still here. Saint Anicia, who was a young martyr in Thessaloniki, was buried outside the Cassandra Gate, and they found her relics about 20 years ago, exactly where the tradition said they should be, outside the Cassandra Gate. And so it's a special city. It's really the best city in all of Greece. Much more livable than Athens. The air is cleaner, and it's easier to find your way around, and it's a very open city to live in, and I like it very much. So we'll make an actual educational broadcast a little later at the site where Apostle Paul first preached the gospel in Thessaloniki. We're looking at the walls of the old city of Thessaloniki, the Byzantine city again, and here we're going into the monastery of Latavon. This is the site where Apostle Paul preached the gospel. The old synagogue was here before, and so we'll give you a little tour of this, those of you who have not been here before, and maybe say a few other words. This is the Patriarchal Institute is here also, and a new building built beside the church, and it's what we call a Stavropegial monastery, and directly under the Patriarch of Constantinople. The institute's rather impressive. But I'm looking at these sites where Apostle Paul preached, and things like the Patriarchal Institute. It's often a mystery to me how we tend to close down our minds a lot, and we no longer respond to the circumstances of the life in which we live. Apostle Paul dealt with the community and the society and the cultures in which he encountered, and he was flexible enough to adapt to cultural situations in order to preach and manifest the gospel. In our own time, as I think we've mentioned before in our broadcast, as we've entered into a new axial era, there's a dramatic shift, not only in the basis of culture, society, but actually in the way people think. And there are a couple of concepts that probably the Church should take into account, but I don't think within the Orthodox Church we have people who are particularly capable of doing that. When we turn to the Holy Fathers, and we never leave the patristic age. There's no such thing as metapatristicos or post-patristic age. The Orthodox Church is permeated and lives in a patristic era with a patristic mindset. Now, that should not be seen as something that narrows us down and limits our capacity for thinking, but rather something that has a response and an answer to almost all the questions that match us today. And this two concepts are the Baldwinization, which is a process of the mind, and not only Baldwinization, but what's now called Evo-Devo, evolutionary development, or cultural and social development. And this development in which the mind, because the human mind is very plastic, and most of you have heard of neuroplasticity, and you know how sometimes it's twisted and misused. But in fact, because of neuroplasticity and because of the social pressures on the evolution of the mind itself, and even the structure of the mind, we find that people, young people in particular, actually think in a different mode, on a different basis, within different concepts. And the concepts and modes with which we've been dealing in the past, or which we've been thinking in the past, simply cannot address the younger generations. And unless we can somehow find a way to adapt, and we need to have conferences about it, but not just conferences where we talk, conferences where we try to determine what we can actually do, to take into account this dramatic shift in the basis of the way people think, the way the brain operates and thinks, the way we put the world together, the way we put life together in our minds. There's this enormous shift has taken place. The Orthodox Church still can respond and answer every question that arises, unless we allow ourselves to fall into the dry scholasticism that I dare say many of the younger theologians in Greece are really not Orthodox, they're scholastic. And they talk about a metapatristic age, or post-patristic age. And when they say that, what they've done is to have fallen into a kind of medieval scholastic way of thinking, which is rather shocking for people brought up in this era. But really the Baldwinization, of course, Baldwin's theories are somewhat controversial, but I think that the term itself is a very good foundation for thinking about what happens to the mind when there's a radical and dramatic shift, such as there has been in the last 3 decades, where even the basis of communication itself has changed. And the way the mind functions, the way it develops, the way things unfold in the mind, these are all undergoing a very dramatic change and shift. And there are things that we need to address in a very concrete and sincere way, and with a little humility, not thinking that we can impose the fantasy world in which some of us still live upon the younger generation. We cannot return to or go back to anything. We have to move forward with everything. And I think if people understood orthodoxy and the real processes of orthodoxy somewhat better, they might discover ways to respond that are deeply present within the Orthodox faith and within the patristic corpus and the patristic tradition. I was trying to engage Father Elpidophorus of the Ecumenical Patriarch in a little discussion about the understanding of Hellenism, because I realized